Again, we find a traveler from Har Ephraim making his way via Binyamin to get to Beit Lechem, Yehuda. But I'd like to focus on Beit Lechem. If you have a place called Bakery Town, what primary natural resource do you think they'll likely be blessed with in that area? Probably wheat, right? We already find in the times of the Shoftim with Boaz and Ruth that Beit Lechem is unsurprisingly a place where people had fields of wheat. Do you know who the wheat farmer's greatest enemy is? The shepherd. One spends all of his time and resources planting and growing the grains. The other can come in and uproot everything. Not nibbling on a leaf here or there, they uproot and destroy the plants. It's no wonder that the two have been enemies throughout history, starting with the very first confrontation between a farmer and shepherd. Any guesses? Cain and Hevel. The psukim don't say it's for this reason, but the strife is already there. It gets to the point where Chazal say that it's forbidden to raise these animals in Eretz Yisrael. Wait, how can that be? We have lots of examples of holy shepherds in Eretz Yisrael. The continuation of the Meimra is that while it's usher inside Eretz Yisrael, it's permitted in the midbariyot of Eretz Yisrael. And that brings us to Beit Lechem. Much like Yerushalayim and the other sites along the watershed line of the mountains, the people here are living on the edge. Like we saw from the Mount of Olives regarding Nachalat Yehuda, they can be settled and working the land in the lush, fertile Mediterranean climate, and yet also dabble in some shepherding just around the corner in the Judean desert. Usually, primarily for their own limited household needs, rather than on large-scale industrial level. I'm right now looking out over Beit Lechem of today, and you can see the vast difference in scenery in the different directions. This will also come to mind when we see the different types of foods mentioned throughout these prakim. We can have foods relating to agriculture and produce relating to raising animals. It also perhaps helps us to understand Dovid's stature in the family. If the main family business was shepherding, as they grow, they may have others working for them. Until then, the entire family might be involved in the family business. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. They were likely a farming family, and we'll see from what David's brothers say to him in the next parak, that they only have a few sheep, probably for their personal needs and use. As such, in that case, while the older brothers do the real work in the field, they send the young one, who isn't yet old and strong enough to take part in the tough farming work, to wander with the sheep. Even today, you can often see Bedouin children in charge of entire flocks of sheep with relative ease, at least from the perspective of someone passing by. In a farming family, the sheep boy was probably not the most respected position in the family, but from a Tanakh perspective, shepherding is the training ground for true leadership. He watches over and takes care of these sheep without worry, of course, for being voted out and losing his position. He's concerned primarily with the well-being of his flock. And often, it isn't even his own sheep, but it's his responsibility. For instance, we have Midrashim of Moshe Rabbeinu when a little goat got away from him and ran off, and Moshe chased after it and found it drinking by a brook. And instead of getting angry with the little goat that made him run through the desert chasing after it, he realizes that the goat must have been thirsty and probably now tired after his run. So Moshe lifts the little goat onto his shoulders to carry it back. And Dovid, who saw how some of the weaker sheep couldn't get food as the strong ones would push them out of the way and hog it all. So they were only left with the tougher stubble that they didn't have the strength to eat. So he would let them out first to graze on the softer greenery, and only then let the stronger ones who could handle the tougher remaining plants. In both cases, Hashem says, if that's how they care for the sheep they lead, I want them to be the shepherds over my flock, Am Yisrael. If you want to know how much of a dedication or responsibility it is to be a shepherd, then the best example is to take a look at how Yaakov describes the task and dedication needed when speaking with Lavan. Ze 20 shana anochi imach, vechilecha veizecha lo shikelu, ve'elei tzoncha lo achalti. 20 years I was with you, and I didn't lose any of the baby sheep or goat. Treifa lo heveiti elecha, anochi achatena miadi tevakshena, Gunavti yom ugunavti laila. If there was any injured animal, I took it from my own instead of bringing it to you, fully dedicated whether day or night. Haiti bayom achalani chorev v'kerach laila v'tidad nafshi me'enai. In the overbearing heat of the day and the bitter, biting, freezing nights with the sleep stolen from my eyes. This is the dedication we expect from leaders in Judaism. Rav Kook insisted on having the entrance of his house outside the courtyard as opposed to all the other apartments in the complex. At that time, this was not only unusual but considered relatively unsafe. But he explained, what if someone needs something in the middle of the night and they won't have access to me? Rav Kook saw his position as chief rabbi not as a master who demands respect, but as he put it, ke'eved la'am kadosh. He saw himself as a servant of the holy nation. That's what a Jewish leader is meant to look like. Shaul's outward appearance was misleading. The same could have happened by Dovid's older brothers. But Hashem sees into a person's heart. That's where real leadership qualities rest. But of course, while protecting the sheep, there are certain skills that a shepherd has time to practice and master. One of them is in the downtime, they can contemplate and learn to play instruments. Perhaps this is where David's skills developed with the kinnor. And of course, another skill they often develop, using the kella or slingshot. More on that in the next parak.